Thank you guys for joining us tonight to hear a little bit more about what the world of sports production has been like in the COVID era. We've got a great panel tonight, so thank you guys for being here. No need to turn on video, so don't worry about that. We'll keep all you guys muted. If you guys do have questions, please feel free to toss them into the chat in the Zoom, and we'll make sure that the panelists can get them answered for you. So without further ado, I will hand this off to Romi Bean from CBS 4, and she will moderate the panel and take us through the evening.
I wanted to just begin with little introductions. I'm going to let these gentlemen introduce themselves so you can kind of get an idea, if you don't already know who they are, everything that they've done, and a lot of accomplished guys on this panel. So I'm excited to be moderating it. And let's just start right away. Pop in with Russ. Why don't we start with Russ?
Starting with me right away, sure. So from way of background, I have been working in live sports production for, well, a long time, including when I was in college. We were doing basketball games, actually ran cables across the street from the TV studio at Bradley University and did Bradley Braves basketball, and always knew that's what I wanted to do, and I mean always. And so been with it for a while. I won't bore you with all the details of my career path, which is kind of circuitous, but been with the Broncos for 4.5 years. In that time, we started a broadcast department. We have a half-hour show we produce every night, and we have a monthly and a quarterly special, and this is the week when all of them hit at one time. So a staff of 4 or 5 people, and we've got 7 shows to kick out this week. So easy, right? And so I've been doing mostly live, but production. And before the Broncos, I was a freelance producer director, doing things mostly in sports for ESPN, Big Ten Network, Fox Sports, places like that. Prior to that, I opened, and it's actually right over my shoulder, Great American Ballpark, 2003, and was the first person that they have brought in to start up their video production facility. It's interesting. We really went from when I started in that business, and prior to that, I freelanced with the Bengals, with the Browns, opened up a stadium for the Cincinnati Bengals in 2000. And it's really interesting because still at that time, they were just kind of grabbing random people and saying, hey, we got a video board, do something with it. And it is one profession that certainly in 15, 20 years has matured and grown up. And the things that are done by my colleagues around the league and around professional sports is amazing. The productions they do, the graphics, the presentation, just incredible from where we were all those years ago. But anyway, here at the Broncos doing stadium entertainment. So the big video board, ThunderVision here, and then also, again, overseeing the broadcast department. In total with ThunderVision, engineering, and broadcast, I think I have 12 people reporting to me these days. So that's the quick down and dirty.
That was perfect. It was perfect, quick, down and dirty. Dave, what do you?
Well, thanks. I recognize some names out here. I'm Dave Zur. I've been over at Altitude now since we started it. And prior to that, I was involved in a lot of integrations and that sort of thing. So I worked with all the guys over at Fox, and I used to live in a truck back in the days when Tom was running camera. So I was the audio guy and the dirty 5-letter word in a TV truck, right? But that said, I've been very fortunate. The Kroenke organization has been just an unbelievable ownership footprint that it's followed the bouncing ball. And it has been very exciting to be a part of Altitude and the subsequent acquisitions we made, buying the Outdoor Network, buying the World Fishing Network, and buying Sportsman Network. At one point, we were also home of Houston, Comcast Sportsnet Houston, which was a little bit of a coup for us with the mighty Comcast down the street from us. But we helped them launch. And so we've acted as a service provider, not only to our own company, but to outside companies. We operate Altitude 1 and 2 right now, which is obviously the home of the Nuggets, the Avalanche, the Mammoth, the Rapids. And that is, it's a busy run. Ken Miller is with us. So he's running the production arm, and Kenny's got a great history of producing baseball and everything under the sun. Matter of fact, he was producing back in the day when I was doing Prime Sports gigs with Tommy and the gang out in the trucks. That said, we are to date, we operate 5 full-time networks, well, 4.5 out of our shop in Centennial. And then we operate a fifth network out of a data center up in Canada, the Sportsman Canada version. So we have a lot of hunt, shoot, fish programming. We also have about 50 edit bays doing various things around the building, whether it's delivering content for the My Outdoor TV app, which is about 30,000 assets at this point. So it's, we have authenticated apps and streams and things that we're doing. So there's just terabytes going out the back door every single day. So keeping the pipes free and keeping the editors happy and keeping everything going has been pretty exciting. But for me, made the jump from audio into freelance engineering and then into facility work when we opened the Pepsi Center. Had sat in a lot of the different seats, TD, and I was really bad at Chiron, so they moved me to audio. And so with that, I've met some really interesting and fascinating people and vendors and that, and we're just really thankful that our ownership keeps doing new and unique things. We one of these days, I think he's probably going to buy a baseball team. But as we sit today, we're just busy as little beavers trying to keep all the channels running, all the editors happy, all the content flowing. And we also support, part of our organization is involved with Wintercom, for those who used to do the rodeo stuff back in the old days. And they are still a big post house. They have about 30 Avid systems down in Tulsa. And then part of that acquisition was Sport Outdoor Channel. We also inherited Skycam. So that's been a really exciting part of our business, and it plays so well into what Russ does. And I'll stop there.
Okay. And you could just keep going. I could just listen forever. And we've got Scott. Scott, thank you for joining us. Just give us a little brief bio about yourself before we really dive in.
So my name is Scott Adametz. I'm super excited to be here. I actually represent the eSports side of sports. In the past, I kind of grew up building traditional networks around traditional sports, and I made the jump about 3 years ago to Riot Games. So we just completed our World Championship in Shanghai, China. I'll share some behind the scenes. I'd love to talk about how esports and traditional sports, they're not that different. The production methods and techniques are very similar. And if you looked into the crowd, you'd see a bunch of cheering fans. There's no difference. It's still fandom. I've worked for Fox, launching Big Ten Network, launched Pac-12 Network, and now before Riot NFL. And I'm happy at the other side of the tech bubble and gaming, having worked at Riot Games about 3 years now.
Great. This is great. So like Jason said at the beginning, if anyone has questions, just drop them in the chat. I'll definitely try and weave them in as we're going, but to hopefully be pretty free form, and guys, feel free to, feed off each other. I think that the place to start is, since we are talking about how much sports has changed, sports production, esports production has changed in the COVID era, going back to March, April-ish, I know that all of you have had very significant events that you've had to put on, and some came right as the pandemic really started to hit. Is there anyone who wants to start? Okay, then I'll just pick someone. Russ, I'm going to start with you because it came with the NFL draft. That happened in April, not long after really everything shut down. Can you talk a little bit about your process and how you had to change your processes and make that happen?
Sure. What I truly, though, find amazing now is how far we've come in a short amount of time. Because we were really back in April making it up. There was not a whole lot of production going on, any kind of content. Sports leagues were shut down and everything else. And so we obviously have this connection with our fans and want to make sure that we can continue that connection. Have a TV show I had to do every half hour, and no content to put in those shows, but that's another story. But when it came to the draft, obviously that's a huge touch point with our fans. And we thought that we needed to do what we could to bring that, to deliver them the content from the draft. Now, there are a lot of restrictions of what we could do as an NFL club, because the NFL does protect its broadcast rights holders and its TV partners, but we could do programming leading up to the draft and right after the draft and things like that. And we weren't sure what we were going to do, and we ended up stumbling. We have fantastic engineers who work here, and Jeremy Wecker, Pat Jordan, myself, we stumbled upon a company called Easy Live that was really, they had a game engine so that gamers can see each other when they're doing their thing, which Scott knows all about and I know nothing about. And so really our engineering team just kept pushing and pushing and pushing them to the point where they learned so much about what their technology could do that they had no idea. But here's what it turned out to be. And we did about 7 hours of live programming over a couple of nights during the NFL draft. And that was me in the loft of my bed of my house with this computer and a couple of other computers and an HDMI into my big screen TV and all that kind of stuff, where through Easy Live I could bring in content. So we had our talent, and again, it's very commonplace now, and they've made it really easy. But at the time, it's like, how are we going to do this? We had talent at their houses and had them doing a little bit of Q&A and back and forth. And one of the sources in this software-based switcher, this virtual switcher, we put Zoom into there. And so we'd have somebody talk, have their mic on one switch to talk to us as we were doing our Easy Live feed. And then when they interview a player or one of our draftees, they would jump over to Zoom. We'd take that source in the switcher. They would use a different mic input, and we just kept bouncing back and forth. So for us, challenges were the lag when I give a cue in the 3 or 4 seconds, and lags have almost all gone away now. The latency has gone away. But talking to the graphics person, talking to who was, he was at his house in Arvada, and I was at my house in Golden, and one talent was downtown and one was south of Centennial, and just trying to bring in all those sources and coordinate it took a lot of prep time because nobody had done it then. Now, when I talk about it, I almost feel silly that we've come so far in 6 months and what they're able to accomplish. But early on, we jumped in and felt pretty good. Oh, and the other thing, by the way, we connected to the stadium so that we could play back some content there, some pre-recorded content from the stadium. And actually, that was remoted in. So somebody was playing back content from their house. I don't even know where everybody lives, but playing back the content using the assets from our studio, the graphics that were part of this Easy Live game engine kind of thing, and just trying to get it all to work. And it actually worked pretty well. We had a lot of views, a lot of people wanting to know what was going on with their beloved Broncos, and but really was a challenge is before the time that Mobile Television Group was doing their cloud-based production, and before the time that so many are doing what they're doing now. Clearly, the bigger companies, when you look at the Big Ten Network, and Scott was a part of this, they built these infrastructures to do these at-home productions. We didn't, and that wasn't part of what we did. We built a studio down in Centennial and planned to use that for everything we did. So anyway, it was just an exercise in, well, got to do something, let's figure it out. And early on, that's how we figured it out from here.
We already have a great question for you, Russ. How did you get the latency down after the initial issues with it?
Say that one more time.
How did you get the latency down after the issues with it?
We don't get it down. I've directed things. Even Big Ten Network, when I first started doing their micers from Chicago, you just learn to deal with it. You learn to give a cue 3 seconds, before the previous segment was over, and have them start talking, and then the latency would pick up. So it was just a matter of rehearsing and figuring out what that timing would be from our different sources. And even, the roll cues remind me back in the old days, and I can say this to Dave because he knows the old days, when you queued up 2-inch quad tape and you had to give it a 5-second pre-roll instead of all these instant rolls that we're familiar with today. So it's just a matter, and I think, I don't want to say this, but I think being older, I was used to having a certain latency with tape rolls and all that I was able to adapt to that. But we just, honestly, we lived with it is what we did. We worked around it.
And if I could add to that, Russ, that while I wasn't I wasn't a quad guy, my wife was really good with quad machines, and she could delay across multiple machines. But that's a beer story. I think what we developed, because we did something similar, and not to jump on you, Russ, but you develop a cadence. The latency is something you can't control. Your circuits will dictate it. Your systems will dictate it. So you really get in, and it's the only word I can think of. Like Russ is saying, you got a 7-second count back early. We had one point we're dealing with a 7-second additional delay coming out of master. So coming into master. So the counts back from breaks and things it was really a trick, and we had to work through it a little bit. We rehearsed it actually in one of our down rooms, but the cadence for the director with the Zoom calls, with the Skype type of interactions, there's definitely a 1,000 take, and it's like dancing. If you get into it, you're not stepping on anybody's feet. Please, Russ, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, I was just about done there, except to say one thing. The thing that frightened me most was, and this we couldn't control, and that is the internet speeds in our homes and the up and downloads of that, and whether some were on Wi-Fi, and we tried to plug in everywhere we could. At one point, I lost the feeds and just pretended that I had them because that's what you do. But we had CenturyLink, and I had TDS, and somebody else had Xfinity, and all of the different wireless or internet services. Those in this time period when more and more people were doing their work from home, you saw that your speeds just dropped because all your neighbors were sucking up the bandwidth as well. And that was something we couldn't control. That was one of those, oh, please, please, please. And I did have a couple of hiccups during that, but just tried to march on. And, that was, to me, the bigger issue than latency.
I want to jump over to Scott. Dave, hold tight. I'm not ignoring you. Scott, with so something really interesting, the group of us had met before just to talk about this, and something really interesting that Scott had mentioned was that in a way you almost had a head start. This started for you in January, February, because you were doing production and stuff in China, not just here. How has this year evolved in terms of all of the remote production that you've been doing?
Yeah, so Russ is right. We have embraced remote production. I have my whole career. I feel like I'm a broken record. Remote production opens up doors and makes things easier if you invest and if you see the long-term potential of it. So for us, January 25th, I will never forget that day. It was when remember, eSports is global. We don't have the luxury of small regions. We end up having to deal with the world. And we found out in our China team based in Shanghai that they had shut down the office due to an outbreak. This was before I think the US kind of knew what was going on. No one could have predicted that this was coming. But we had already started planning at that point to realize, okay, this is serious. We hoped it wasn't going to come to the United States. We were wrong. But we put plans in place. So I remember it took us from January 25th to around March 25th to realize that this wasn't going away. This was not a short-term thing, and we started pivoting our workloads into Amazon Web Services for a reason, and it's something that Russ brought up. The home internet, for anyone, it can't be the thing that keeps your show on the air or not, because home internet is terrible. I'm in Southern California on Spectrum, awful. I wouldn't trust the entire show to my internet connection. I can barely do a Zoom call. So one of the things we did was we moved all the production into cloud for the reason being that our operators can work with it from their homes, but the video feeds aren't actually traversing their home internet connections. We're keeping all the video up in the cloud and just remoting control. So they can control the different feeds, but they never actually, you lose a few seconds of control is different than losing a few seconds of video and audio. But that was what our big pivot was. And it took us 11 days to recreate what we had built in a control room in public cloud. And let me tell you, it was not easy, and I don't recommend it necessarily unless you know the pitfalls. But that was what we did between the 25th of January and the 26th of March was our work to try to resume our productions in China and throughout the rest of our regions. We have 12 production centers around the world, all closed on the same day because Riot decided it was not safe for anyone to work in our facility. So we didn't have a choice. It was figure something out. You're not going to the control room.
Now, how much of that remote production are you still utilizing, or even you look to the future, you think you will continue to utilize?
This is the new way to produce. We've always done remote production, but it was always from a venue somewhere in the world. We've just did Shanghai, we've done Paris, all over the world, Madrid, but always back to a production center in either Berlin or Los Angeles. Typical control room, Grass Valley switchers, SDI. What will change is we still see the benefit of remote production, but we probably won't require all of our operators to be in one physical location, because as Russ and Dave have mentioned, you can't rely on that. And I don't think anyone ever thought we would be in this scenario where you couldn't have a TD sitting next to a director. That's what we're used to. No more, can't do that. So we will continue remote production. We probably won't go full cloud. There are limitations, but we have plans to build out our own private cloud of resources that we can scale up and down based on need, and make more content more cost effectively. And I wanted to clue in on one thing that Russ said, and Dave, I'm not sure where you're getting 7 seconds of delay, but I will lean in and help. You should not be getting 7 seconds of delay on any of this unless satellite's involved. But what we did is we picked technologies all the way back in the Big Ten days. We picked the technologies because we wanted to do remote production. So we didn't pick H.264. We didn't pick lossy codecs. We didn't pick things that take a long time to encode and decode. And it costs more, but that's how you keep that latency the as low as possible. And so JPEG XS is what we used in Paris last year. It's 1 millisecond encode to decode. It doesn't get faster. And it's still a reasonable data rate. So if anyone's looking to get into this and hasn't already, pick your codecs based on the need for remote production. Don't just use what you're used to, or God forbid, go H.264, because you're going to then have that call it before it happens, because you're kind of like anticipating the encode to decode latency.
Yeah, one of the things that we had connecting our sources as well was the live view encoder decoder. Now that was not 7 seconds, but it is.
But that cell, you have no choice. You
Right.
got to keep the data rate as low as possible. Yeah, JPEG XS is 10 to 1, so 200, 300 megabits. So you suddenly home internet is no longer possible with that.
Right.
Talking about not having ever experienced, Scott, off what you were talking about, how we're going to go this into the future. Dave, you had not one but two teams in a bubble for playoffs, something that none of us would have ever imagined. How did you go about, can you just start with how you go about making that process work and what you found worked and didn't work? Oh, you're muted, Dave.
Sure, an awful lot of it was it was the best thing I said. An awful lot of it was determined by the leagues. And going back to the 7 seconds, we were the victim of many other transmission lines. You deal with what you get, right? That said, with the teams in the bubbles, some of the hardest part was just getting equipment into Canada. You wouldn't think that's hard, but to try to get all the hockey stuff up into Canada was very, very difficult. So there is such a huge prop that goes out to the organizations themselves, franchises working with the leagues so closely. When it came down to the actual productions, for us, we set up a truck up at Pepsi Center. I'm sorry, the Ball Arena. I can't say that. It's the Ball Arena. I can hear the GM going mad somewhere in the back of my mind. And sure enough, what we did is we used the H-sand that comes directly from the NBA. So we took the feeds out of Orlando directly to a truck down there at Ball Arena. They did all of the show in that truck because we had head-to-head games and we couldn't hot bunk our control room. We only have, one primary control room at our facility down in Centennial. And so the Ball Arena became the Nuggets, and then our shop became all of the Avalanche. We did all the plexi. We did, everything imaginable to do mitigation. We have UV microphone and headset cleaning stations and all that stuff. And, all those protocols were we hit them hard on about, this is week 34 of work from home, but we never truly left. So well over 60% of the year we've been doing this. So when you ask Scott, what's it look like going forward? This is the new normal. So as we were in it, we had limited crews in the trucks to the best of our ability, limited crews in our shop, and we weren't in any of the cloud control models at this time. But we did have a heavy interaction with the Zoom type calls. A lot of the player interviews coming in from the arenas, from the bubbles or down in Orlando, multiple arenas on the campus. Those were coming in via Zoom. A lot of latency there, and you're kind of at the mercy of those internet connections. With that, though, the production was pretty much the production when you're living on a world feed. You really don't have a whole lot of options to sell your product. We can't have a Subaru free throw of our own, We can't do a special Toyota penalty shot. We did some of our own vert on the hockey. So we'd align with them. We'd do all the metrics and then set up our virtual advertising on the glass. And then we realized, it's just, it's too much of we were the victim of a bad fax too often. So we kind of backed off on some of that because, they were crazy down there in the bubbles. And, a real testament to the people who spent 80, 90 days in those bubbles, away from family, away from friends, having to stay in the hotel room. That was a punishment. That said, the teams played really well. We didn't quite get there, but it was very exciting seasons nonetheless. And I think if I could go back, maybe more interesting than the bubbles, and I'm glad to take questions on them, they kind of are what they are. They're dictated by the leagues. The COVID, the protocols for COVID in the bubbles is really intense. And the amount of testing some of the people went through is just over the top. Very quickly, though, when we were in early March, we knew this was coming. We went away March 16th. It was early April where Josh Kroenke came to us and said, we want to do a telethon or something. We want to utilize our players since they're all locked up. We want to get them out talking to their fans and continuing to connect with the fan base. That's where we kind of did where a lot of others, these Zoom type of calls. And, that was a big thing for us to get in immediately. It was such a hit for us. We were doing about 3 hours a day with it. Then we backed off, but we're getting lots of interviews with players and handed to the production staff for drumming up interviews. And I mean, it wasn't just talking to the Zamboni guy who, that gets old pretty quick, right? Even though he's a great guy. That said, you got to keep it pretty compelling. And they did a terrific job. Kenny's crew really nailed it. And I think Josh was extremely happy with the result. But what we learned, though, is it was successful enough that we opened up something on the other side of the house, and we did a country social, we called it, where we had country artists being interviewed, playing their guitars and singing songs out of their living rooms and their kitchens. And it was a smash. We had all sorts of people really digging in for that, so much so that they've continued that beyond the initial push. So while I don't think we want to see the nightly news on Zoom, we're going to continue to see some of this. We've all gotten comfortable with it. And I liken it to the fact that you can still see America's Funniest Home Videos on primetime somewhere. And a lot of that's still VHS, right? So, our sense of fidelity, while we want 4K and 8K and, 1080p HDR and all this, we'll still watch a guy slip and fall on a banana peel in VHS, no problem, right? We're all glad to see that. And I don't mean to pick on banana peels. But, that's been a big piece for us. I think as we're looking forward in the restart to the seasons, a lot of organizations are struggling. And I can't speak for the NFL, but we have parking, we have concessions, we have ticket sales, we have all those things. And we have a whole host of people who depend on that for their livelihood. So we really want to see the games come back to our arenas, even if it's a 18,000 seat facility like the Ball Arena that you can only fill to say 6,000. That's 6,000 fans having a good time in the stands, cheering on the team and being a part of that tribal experience, because we kind of miss it through this. The pheromones aren't there. Somebody spilling a beer on you isn't there. All those things that make that experience, really magical in an arena. We really want to bring that back. So right now, I know the teams, the leagues, they're all in heavy duty preparation. It looks like they're going to have a number of bubbles out there. But what they're going to do is try to pick local hubs. So you might have somewhere like Las Vegas be a hub for hockey. I know we're in a little bit of a pickle as they're trying not to do multi-sport arenas for multi-sports. So maybe the Ball Center would be just NBA. So we'll have to see how that goes. But we're excited to hear that they're looking to resume play maybe on the 22nd of December. That means the off season was not off. We're just full speed. And, as far as we go forward, Russ mentioned the Mountain Mobile, I still call it Mountain Mobile TV group, their cloud control model. It looks like it's got a lot of legs, but I think that the Sinclair group with the 22 RSNs they bought from Fox, they're going to have a lot of say in that. And we all have to play in the same pool. So my prediction is we'll most likely be starting out with pool feeds, the world feed again, just because while it's not hyper expensive, it isn't cheap to do cloud control. And there's quite an acclimation to it with, again, some of the latency, the fact that, you're remote controlling a truck in a distant land, trying to get your bread and butter home. So there's a lot to be determined there. And I kind of got off track there, but I throw one more thing in about the bubbles, and that is with Skycam. We found that trying to get an operator in, they're like TDs, like high-end producers, like all the specialty crew that we have on these shows. There isn't a lot of them in some markets. Some are very heavy, others aren't. So if you have someone who tests and they're kicked out of the bubble, it's 7 days minimum. And, a lot of these places, they'll try to retest, but ESPN has very stringent protocols. And so all of a sudden you have an operator, you've got a system sitting there, you can't run it. And you might have an operator who can't get in because of that. And so there you are, we're either losing revenue or they're losing a key visual for the production of the game. And the Skycam is really a unique view. We're really proud of it. So we actually stood up a remote control in Denver with both a Sky Command room with the actual joysticks to fly the strut, and then a knock where someone could act almost like an assignment desk editor and deal with the various venues, whatever problems they might be having, whether it's mechanical things, back focuses, telemetry, etc. And so that's a big part, sort of setting up a regional hub here in Denver. And I have a little video. I'll try to show it a little bit later here because I wasn't ready for it. But pretty interesting to see some of the things that we've been forced to do when you have no other choice. It's like, how are we going to do this? Okay, well, we'll give it a shot in Denver and say, do it. And the boss is like, well, why wouldn't we? I don't know, because it could cost something. But so far, we've done things very affordably and kept it rolling. Does that kind of help?
Absolutely. Okay, so here's a question kind of for all three of you. You've all mentioned some pieces of technology that you've used, to get content on the air, but a big question has become how to engage the fans, how to enhance the fan experience, especially with them not being in there, we're not sure when everyone's going to get to be back in there. How have you guys, what are some of the tools you guys have used to help you enhance the viewer experience?
Well, for us at the stadium, we had 5,700, and it's for 2 games, and we'll see if we have fans for the rest of the year with the uptick that we've seen in COVID. So what clearly all that we're about is engaging our fan base. And we did a few things. One, we did training camp, and I want to kind of answer the question too about sanitation and safety measures. But we did training camp because fans were not allowed at training camp. And what was fortunate for us is that when we built our studio about 1.5 years ago down in Centennial, we built it so that we have connection, fiber between the facilities. And so we had the fewest number of people in the control room down at the facility in Centennial at UC Health Training Center. And then up here at the stadium at Empower Field, we had graphics, we had Dreamcatcher playback. We had several people in this facility, so we had to spread things out that way. But to engage our fans, just throwing them any content that they could feel like they can grab onto. As far as the sanitation and safety measures, what we had to do on game day, we used to have, 26 people in our control room. I think we're down to 15 now. And there's plexiglass between every position. There is a UV cabinet where all the headsets, microphones, all the touch points go to. The cameras are cleaned afterwards, the handles, the focus, and all that kind of stuff. So plexiglass, masks. We actually had an engineer who had a little bit of a scare, thought he might have something that he didn't want to give to the rest of us. And he ended up through our Riedel headsets. He was at home last week in our last home game, and here's the thing that's amazing to me, is he was at home. He could, through a remote control, get into every piece of equipment in our control room and do what he needed to do when we needed him. So his listening, his on headsets. The thing that kind of is to me, maybe it's amazing, maybe it's just technology, but that the equipment manufacturers years ago thought it would be good to have remote monitoring systems And it's like, oh yeah, sure, okay, we won't use that, but if it comes with it, sure. But now we're thrust in the position where, my gosh, we need to VPN into places or KVM into places, and somehow otherwise get to our equipment and control it from those places. So manufacturers were, they certainly didn't foresee this, but we're out in front of the need for having control from an engineer, EIC kind of a person, from a remote location. It's mostly at first for monitoring. Oh yeah, you have a fan that's overheating, and so we need to know about that. But your question originally was about fan and engaging them. The other thing that we've done is we now have an hour pregame show that we put on social channels, and it's actually two things. It's sponsorship. We didn't have 76,000 fans in the stadium, and sponsorship, we're trying to help them be whole. So we moved that to this pregame show from our Mile High Monument out here. And I don't know, we just any way we can to make them feel a part of the game day experience by having traditions that are videotaped, whether it's the anthem, whether it's the parade of colors, things like that. We have the Thunderstorm team. If you don't know, they jump into the stadium every game. They're not allowed to jump in here. I argued with the NFL. I said, they come in here through a door that no one else comes in through, and that's up in the sky. So why can't they come in? But I didn't win that argument with the NFL either. But I'm not sure if I'm answering that question very well, except to say we look for ways that we can have our fans feel like they're still having that game day experience, that they still are seeing traditions, Thunder, the horses out there, the Stampede, cheerleaders, all that part we try to bring to them. And I will say this, the other thing that Scott and Dave and I are figuring out, or there are things that we have figured out in the last 8 months that we've got to try that will keep moving forward. And that could be some of the Zoom calls. We do a show with beat reporters on the Broncos every Monday night. We've expanded now. We aren't bringing 3 people into the studio with our host. We're now doing it via Zoom so we can have people from national CBS or NFL Network or other places like that. And we are finding through the success of a pregame show that maybe there is a market for that, and we'll just continue to try to grow that and reach people. But I think what Scott's doing and the video he showed us before was really cool, and I think he should show that to us to show how he's engaging his fan base.
I was going to just tee off of what you said we're using this as an opportunity. We could try something new and go further. Look behind me, you can see the background. That's usually a stadium filled with 20, 30,000 screaming esports fans. We couldn't have that. We did for the finals end up with 6,000, which we were shocked by. We weren't expecting that, but through the luck of how China is dealing with this in Shanghai, we could have 6,000 fans. But I'd love to show you, if you guys don't mind. I'll show you what we did. Is we went extended reality. We decided, if we can't move the show to its regular 6-city tour that we would normally do, let's have the set change. So if you will give me a second to figure this out, I will show you what we actually came up with and then tell you how we did it, if anyone is interested.
Absolutely.
It is definitely not lined up, but we will get there.
While he's setting it up, one of the things, Romi, that I think we're able to do in these Zoom calls, just like we're doing here, is access. It's a different type of access to ask a player to sit in front of his computer for a little bit. And I think that's really been a big part of the fan experience. And what you're about to, Scott's fans are rabid for it. They have to fight them off. So to engage the Riot fans is that's kind of easy. It's how do you give them the product that they're used to seeing? And I don't mean to undercut that, Scott. It's just my son's a gamer. You can't keep him away from it.
And they're very vocal. When you disappoint them, they let you know. Very, very vocally. So we have to be very careful not to. Yeah, I'm happy to show you. So if anyone hasn't seen the first 5 stages of Worlds this year, we actually did from one single studio in Shanghai. It was at the Shanghai Media Technology Center. Give you an idea of what it looked like. It was 270 degrees of LED walls and floors. And then we superimposed extended reality using the Unreal Engine for everything above. I'm happy to show you that there was a lighting grid. You just delete it. We didn't have to show anyone that. We used the lights to create the lighting effects we needed, and then we just told the Unreal Engine delete all of this and replace it with something else. And that something else could be the city skyline of Shanghai. And every stage, we changed it. So it lasted about a week each stage, and then we would completely design something new, added augmented reality that kind of jumped out of the set. And now keep in mind, this was based on technology that was pioneered for the Disney Plus show, The Mandalorian. If anyone knows how they shot, it's called Stagecraft, how they shot The Mandalorian. We borrowed that technology, but we had to solve a couple big problems. We needed to do it live. It had never been done live before because we're on air for 8 to 10 hours nonstop. So we can't have tracking get off and the cameras suddenly start to like lose that parallax viewpoint. So and it had to be in sync. We had to have multiple cameras be able to be cut by the director without limitation. So normally you do this with one camera. That's not going to work. So to give you an idea of what it looks like behind the scenes, if you look on the right side, there's this weird perspective shift that happens. Only one camera is ever live at a time, always from the perspective of the fan at home. So they have the best view of anyone. There's no, if you were standing on set, it just looks like a weird blur. But if you're a fan at home, it looks like 1,000-foot chasm between our two player sleds where the players actually play the game. And that was something very odd to us. I feel like when we first saw it, we didn't believe it. And I linked a YouTube documentary of how we did that technology for anyone who's interested and wants to see behind the scenes. It was the first time we've ever attempted something like this, and it was a huge success. And to prove that that's what they saw behind the scenes, that's the view from the tech compound for the entire 5 weeks of show. That was it.
Awesome.
So Scott, from that kind of production with that AR and XR, what do you, looking forward, especially since Dave said, your fans are so rabid, what are things that you are, we are absolutely going to keep using this, and maybe things that you're just going to scrap and not use anymore?
We're keeping XR. All of our regional studios in 2021 are going to get this technology. That's our goal. We have a partnership with Cisco who's helping us actually. The amount of computational processing that's required for this is immense. That LED wall, floor, and the Unreal Engine is a 32K canvas that is rendered in real time across 4 cameras. And you have to pre-render all the cameras so you can switch between them and not have to, the director decided to, ready camera 2, take camera 2, hold on, we need a chance to catch up on rendering. That's not tenable. So we're going to deploy this in all of our regional studios for a very specific reason. We have multiple games now. So esports is not just one company or one game. Everyone plays multiple games. Riot happens to have now 4 esports. And if we wanted to do this in a traditional model, we'd have to build 4 studios in each region for the 4 sports, because they all have different looks, different feels. Some are way more high fantasy, some are more tactical shooters. So we don't want to do that. We think it's smarter to build XR sets and then through a save file, bring up an entirely different environment. That to us is just a huge win.
So do you, and this is going back a little bit, but the Amazon Web Services, do you see it going back to when you guys are all in a traditional production room, like you talked at the beginning? Or, do you feel like it's going to be more just through work from home, all these remote broadcasts?
We're leaving it decentralized. We think there's actually power for this. So imagine in our world where we have amazing technologists in Berlin and in China and Korea. Instead of them just working on local shows because they're in a physical room, we can borrow the best talent from all of our different regions and work on combined shows. If anyone doesn't know, Riot produces our events in 19 languages live, so 18 plus English. The only way to do that is to share the load. We couldn't possibly do that all in one facility. So yeah, we're not going back to everyone in one room. We can't. And we're nervous that COVID could come back. This could become a seasonal thing. So if we plan to build everyone back into one room, even with plexiglass, our company could shut down the production facility and say it's not safe, and we don't have recourse.
And I think to add to what Scott said, I don't think COVID's left us. We've just had our sort of and not to wear it on our sleeves, but we've dealt with some problems. Our Rapids team. They had some real challenges over there. We were working so intimately with the state and municipalities. Our COVID task force, I mean, they've done an amazing job. I think somebody had a question about what are we doing to keep things clean? And there's an awful lot going on here. So I was trying to rename something so I could show you some of what we did, because it's really simple, but it's worked pretty well. And let's see if I can do this, and I'll share this with you guys. See if it puts it in order. And bear with me one moment, please. I think, simple is best. And in our situation, we do happen to have the ability to call on the arena. And let's see if I can get the right screen 2. One of the first things we did is we put together, here we go. One of the first things we did is we put together a bunch of little, just like shower caddies that were set up, and we put them in all the production areas. Are you able to see this? Mm-hmm. So these are stationed throughout the buildings, and there's masks and gloves and pumps and, different things and microfiber stuff so people would wipe down intercoms and all that sort of thing. We also leaned on the arena to get a number of portable hand wash stations. This would usually be out there next to a taco cart or something like that on the concession floor. And, we found that they are using the heck out of these. So just the act of continual hand washing. Of course, we plexied everything up and, to put plexi to separate. We do have fairly spacious areas. A lot of control rooms don't offer as much room. A lot of people are 2 rack units per station. So we ended up, putting up plexi where we could. We did about 8 panels. We have some between, producer, director, TD, et cetera, between Chiron and that, a heck of a lot of signage. And this is the tough one to enforce because everybody wants to hang out in production. So that's been a big piece for us. Going back, I think I have a picture here. Here's the Skycam remote control room that we built. So you've got the controllers, and then basically we're either connecting via something like the switch or over the public internet, and we're using some Bitfire encoders that are actually extremely low latency. So that's been pretty cool. We've also added, we took one of our master controls and turned it into a knock. Usually you'd have the game up on the large monitor, you'd have wind and weather, and then communications are also coming over the internet. Now let's see if I can find, hey, I do have it. If I can indulge you a little bit, I'll cut forward. But here's a guy flying. He's flying at the Charger Stadium from Denver. I don't know if you'll hear the audio along with this, but it's not too compelling. And what you're seeing here, he's getting ready to do a zoom where, he'd be coming down the field. They're getting ready. You're going to see the kickoff team lining up. We're going to come around behind the kicker. And here we go. We're going to kick, and it's going to go to the far end. You have him both flying the strut. And actually, there's a guy flying the strut on site, and he's flying the camera effectively. So now the run back is coming, and I did my Berman. He's going to go all the way. And so that was pretty cool. And the latency on the left is less than the latency on the right. And that was just over the public internet. So it's pretty cool stuff. We had a lot of fun playing with it. And I'll unshare. I don't know if that gives, I saw the one question about cleaning. I think, you have to amp up with any custodial services that you have of your own. And, just go straight. This is one where I think depending on your situation, some of you are running air stations. I went to management and basically said, look, this air station and my people in that building, we need to keep those people safe. Clearly, the number one objective of the organization is to keep our staff safe. But if we can't, we have a huge revenue engine that is going to be in question. And going to our DR services out in Chandler, Arizona is good for a few days, but that's not a long-term solution for us. So management gave me the authority to use pretty strong prejudice in our determination of who should be in the building, who shouldn't be in the building. We actually set up a very aggressive protocol working through HR and our task force to really make certain we were approving people to be in a building for a reason they need to be in the building for. Because the last thing I wanted to do was see my master control crew, my operations crew get sick, or my engineering crew. Now there's nobody there to man the engine. And, there are we have 5 9s we're expected to hit for the affiliates. So it was it's definitely been something that's, we've been on Occam's razor all along, worried about it, but 8 months, it's gone surprisingly well, kind of like Russ said, and we keep innovating as we go. Romy, I jumped in. I took you guys a little farther down the road. I don't know if you have more questions.
No, this is beautiful. I like when you guys feed off each other because you all have experiences that relate. I was hoping that you would do that. Actually, we just got in a question, so I'm going to throw this one. This one's for Scott. Darren wants to know if you could speak a little more in depth on the considerations / difficulties of privately scaling up cloud control.
Yeah, happy to. So the cloud is wonderful, but it is just someone else's computer. If anyone doesn't know that, you now know it's just someone else's computer. And there are limitations. So one of the things we ran into early on was capacity. Everyone thinks the cloud is limitless. It's not. We needed these specific GPU instances, the NVIDIA graphics processing units. That's how you can do video in the cloud today. You need it. And so one of the challenges we had was the type of instance that we standardized on. So did the rest of the world, moving their production into public cloud to the point where we used all of them. And we actually had to build bots to try to, we call that a camp bot. It just sits there trying to get instances. Every minute it tries for 48 hours straight. And sometimes we're lucky enough to get enough instances to do our show. And sometimes you don't have enough and you have to kind of pivot last minute. It's not fun. So those are the challenges of moving your production into public cloud without just buying all the resources. And then scaling up on a private cloud, which is why we're going down the private cloud route. We still need those GPUs, but we need to do this effectively. And that's where, for us, it's Cisco. You pick your technology vendor of choice. Same functionality, you virtualize what you're going to use. You just do it on your own hardware instead of public cloud. We love Amazon. Riot's one of the largest users of Amazon on earth. But it doesn't mean that they solve all that ails you. And I know there's even Amazon folks in the call. So if you can fix that, I would really appreciate it. Call Bezos and let him know. But yeah, those are the challenges, is capacity, latency, and then control. One of the things I think is kind of cool is there's these things called zero clients, where you can basically extend the desktop of a virtual machine running in Amazon's data centers to your desk. That we used heavily, because it allowed us to do physical surfaces, button controls, audio mixers, things that the creature comforts that an operator is used to, we could actually attach to an instance running in Amazon, but have it physically present in front of an operator. And that right there changed the way we produce content, because those surfaces suddenly brought a familiarity where otherwise you'd be on a keyboard and a mouse clicking. That's not tenable. Even in esports, like, we pride ourselves on being open to anything. Even that was not going to fly for the types of shows we do and the viewership that we get. We can't rely on that. I hope that answered your question. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jack.
Scott, you've had the luxury of working at scale. I think for a lot of us, we've had to kind of cobble stuff together. I know we jumped right on board with Amazon and set up a number of containers simply so we could use them as little origin sites. Because it's easy to remote into your gear, very easy to do that, and to monitor what's going on. It's hard as heck to see what you're doing with the video and to hear it. And so we ended up turning some of our AWS Elemental streaming engines around to feed monitors out of our buildings, so that as a master control operator is sitting at home in his kitchen running master control, he can actually see a big part of what would be his normal multi-display in the room. Now he's got his list open, he's got his basically he's controlled into our asset base and such. And so getting into the systems was easy, seeing what you're doing and then setting up the audio. So, we didn't have endless streaming sources. So we'd have one master control on the left channel, the other master control on the right channel. And, we had to teach everybody. We sent around 400 computers home throughout the organization, about 50 through our shop, just so that people had enough of a platform they could work off of and try to run a master control on one screen. We sent an awful lot of second screen instances at home as well. But I think, to add to Scott, and I don't know how the rest of you feel, I think the new AWS CDI architecture is going to be really an interesting piece. I know somebody's probably got slides, but they'd have to kill us if they showed us, right? And we recently saw a demo where they actually did a live stream with an overlay on it. And that's always been the big holdback of trying to do this through a data center. I think for us right now, getting your content up. All the data centers want your content. Of course, they don't tell you how expensive the cab ride is home with your content. And that is that's the tough part for us. It's easy to put it all up there and manipulate, but to bring it home for anything you need to do, and we still have a satellite distribution to the whole CONUS footprint. I think I saw Maura Fried on here. She manages a big part of our bazillion affiliates out there. And, it's really it's a challenge to feed both masters. It'd be nice to say, hey, we're completely terrestrial, but we're not. There's a lot of people in rural areas who want hunt, shoot, fish. They're never going to have the bandwidth into some tough shed on a mountaintop that the engineer only gets to every third Tuesday, and so that's kind of where I think that's where we'll really see the things like doing a meetup room at a data center, whether it's private or public, send our content out there, the affiliates go there, get their content, our customers go there, get their content, and then maybe that's something where we're also sending up the bird directly out of the data center. So, a lot of interesting things coming. It's going to be very, very exciting to see what happens with Leo and Mio. That's going to be a paradigm shift in the way we use our internet. So hopefully we, it won't have health effects. But I think outside of that, it's very exciting to see. And of course, I need full-blown 5G when I'm in the Antarctic. There's no question about it. I've never been to the Antarctic. Sorry, Romi.
I've never been either, so I can't comment on that. So one thing that kind of from all three of you has been kind of clear is you've almost brought the future of broadcasting into now, but because perhaps you were forced to or for whatever reason. So from all three of you, I'm curious, what are you working on now? Where do you want to kind of go next? Is there envelopes you're looking to push now that you've kind of been forced into the future, and now we're here?
Russ, you guys always have the biggest aspirations.
We do. I think Scott has bigger aspirations with what they've built. We're just a small little bit player who provides a little bit of content now and again to an audience right here. And so we don't have that global perspective. We don't have the national perspective. And so when we do things, interesting the other day, everybody's been editing from home and trying to access their servers, whether it's cloud-based or VPN or whatever it is. We had a scare at the training facility last week, and so I had to send everybody home. We upload, and we transfer to get our programming to Channel 20 and Channel 9 to get it out. It normally takes about 15 minutes. We had somebody at home. It took over 4 hours for him to upload that because we weren't prepared. And that was the infrastructure we had to, again, go to the next level with is, okay, now how can we get to, again, not the amount of data that Scott does, but how can we get to years of assets that are sitting on the server and be able to edit something and get it out in a timely manner. And that's always a challenge with us. So I think for us, we've got to look at efficiencies. I think we've got to look at what the control room production looks like. As we've lowered the number of people in the control room, we do need to decentralize that. When I looked at perhaps doing that here, we have at the stadium spent a lot of money, as you might imagine, replacing touchless faucets and soap dispensers and paper towels and all these things. The millions of dollars they've spent to upgrade the facility. One of the things that I've been looking at is, can we find some other space and decentralize, but within the stadium, meaning is there a space where we can build out replay? Is there space where we can build out graphics? Clearly there is. The question becomes, do the Broncos have the appetite to be able to do that, to want to do that, given our limited scope of what we do? There's no national broadcast from here. There's no, it's our little fan base here in the Rocky Mountains that we try to appease. And it's so, and in a very small staff. So what are we trying to do? Figure out what those efficiencies are. This is going to continue. It's the magic date is not January 1st. The magic date was not election night and all of a sudden it would go away. All those things that people had talked about or hoped for, it's going to continue on. And I think that as we look to the next season, we've got to figure out how can we keep people working from home and be efficient? How can we do productions, whether some of it's split at Centennial, at Empower Field, or within this structure? How can we do that and continue down the path where our engineer can monitor? You're absolutely right, Dave. When it comes to shading the cameras, he can get to all the controls, but he can't see what he's doing with them when he's shading cameras. So, we still have to figure some things out. But for us, it's, and I think both Scott and Dave alluded to this, we need to make sure that our staffs are protected and that they're working in a safe environment and they're comfortable coming in. And so I just think that I don't think this is ever going away. And I think that the manufacturers got to jump on things. I think that places like Pac-12 Network, Big Ten Network, ESPN, they got to jump on things. What this has done is that it's accelerated the process, and we'll continue to go down that path. But again, for us, I don't know that cloud-based makes sense. And even our distribution, we're not doing any live outside of streaming to YouTube and our own channels. So it's a little bit of a different thing. But man, I love what Scott is doing with VR and XR and those kinds of things. I want to find ways to bring that into our game presentation and our broadcast. That would be a big lift. And it's exciting to see what they're doing. It's really impressive.
And I love how humble Russ is. You can't throw, anybody who lives in Denver, you can't throw a stone on a Sunday without hitting somebody in orange. Little fan base, my ear. Another rabid crowd. And Scott, those guys are after world domination. So I may jump in just real quick here. Romi, I think what we've learned is, in this, we've always thought about going to the cloud, right? Everybody talks about it, and you think about moving your services to the cloud. COVID forced us to move our staff away from the services, which is really the opposite of going to the cloud. But we have truly learned that we can do it. So there is nothing keeping us from potentially, I could hire a master control operator theoretically that could live in Fort Smith, Arkansas or somewhere. It's almost irrelevant. So I hate to say it, but I'll say it on the small group. If you promised all, it didn't come from me, but our industry is changing radically. Where there used to be 10 jobs on a site, there may be 7 now. And I'm hearing this from some of the national crewers. It's going to be very difficult. And a lot of people who have really depended and leaned heavily on this, freelancers in particular, it's going to be a tough run. I think we're trying to balance what we've always done. It's a comfort zone without question. We're good at it. We know how to produce games, into this new model, which is we're not allowed to be there. We're not allowed to talk to people. We're not allowed to sit next to each other. There's less people on site, all of this risk. So it's going to be a blending of how do we sustain our businesses against this very challenging backdrop. For us, while we probably won't take everything to the cloud, we're going to aggressively pursue all models of remote working, just like Scott's group has always been doing. I think it's actually being considered as something I pitched it to management saying, which I'm a part of, saying, this can be an incentive for us that maybe Bill gets to work from home 3 days a month or something. And that really, I don't know. I'm just, pulling this out of a hat, but the lifestyle, and look, after being in the basement for 34 weeks, a lot of people want to get out, and not everybody has the luxury of a bigger room. I'm in my basement all by myself. Some people are in a very tight space with their kids, with their spouse. They're trying to work. They're trying to homeschool. There's a lot of socioeconomic variables that will play into this. So it isn't just us making these decisions in a vacuum. And we have quality people. We want to keep these great people. And we also want to make it so that they can feel good and safe when they're in our shops. They can feel that they're supporting their families in a proper way, and that they also are contributing in a meaningful way. Because, we had a gentleman move. He was one of our ingest operators, and he moved to New Orleans to be with his dad, who had an illness. And of course, he moved down there right as the hurricane hit. So the poor guy, he went down there. We were working remote. He was able to do about 70% of his job, which was fabulous. Then they lost services due to the hurricane. And so, if it's not one thing, it's 2 others. We had somebody who they were under COVID quarantine, and then I think their pet caught a bat. So they were also under rabies quarantine at the same time. It was like, you can't make this stuff up. So with that, there's crazy things going on. But I think what we're seeing is that we are going to have to adapt yeah, I'd hate to be in commercial real estate, to be quite honest, because a lot of us are really rethinking, do we need a giant campus? Obviously, the ball arena, the stadiums, some of the things we're doing, but Scott's World is virtual. They can be a billion-seat arena anywhere they want to imagine it. And with that, Scott, there's my segue.
I can't add any. That was between the two of you. That was a perfect
Show us the
example.
future.
All I would say is we're looking at this as an opportunity. One of the things that I think particularly of interest to me is we don't want to reduce the number of talented individuals we bring in to produce content. In fact, we're hiring, and it's not because I know we're in a unique situation where we can continue, but our goal is not to reduce. Our goal is to actually grow and be more efficient and produce more content, not less. So for us, we look at ways that we can do this. So the example of someone who had to go back for family reasons, I would love a world where you can go back and continue to do your job, hurricanes withstanding, and not have to make that choice. And I think that's what Riot has figured out is we have a big campus. We don't necessarily need that campus to be in one place for the productions around the world. In fact, it's probably detrimental to build one giant facility and instead put all of the resources in a place where everyone can reach them and then remote the operators wherever they want to be. That's the model. And it's worked for us, and it's allowed us to actually create more content than less in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, and I think the traditional things, I have a son who's 30 years old. He's a TD. He was supposed to go to USC this weekend, and something happened there. On Thursday, he's supposed to fly out Thursday to get there Friday for set, blah, blah, blah. And it was just calls like, yeah, we're not doing it because now our announcers were sending them home to do the games. Somebody above the line, I think, had a scare or had COVID. And so I think they're traditional. Somebody asked, is the cheese just moving? And I think it is, but I think it's up to us in the industry to help guide people where that will be. If you live in Chicago or Charlotte or Bristol, Bristol just had a huge layoff, so take that one away. But places that do have the Remis and the Micers, and maybe there's opportunities there, but at the ball center, you won't have side-by-sides anymore. You don't. So there's half the jobs are gone right there in a sense. Paul asked about what he tells his students. I will tell you this. Before I got into this business, I was actually a tenured faculty member. I was in education and teaching production. And Paul, you should reach out to me. We can have a conversation sometime about things. But I left because of what I saw, what we did at the school where I taught, the university. We did awesome job with preparing people for jobs in local broadcasting, which I saw going away through automation and contraction of ownership and all that. So for several reasons, no one ever gives up tenure, but I did. And part of the reason was what I saw happening in the industry. And when my son said he wanted to be a broadcast major, I said, great. Just promise me you won't ever work at a radio or television station unless you're talent, of course, talent, there's always money for talent. And that's just because I had seen how that has changed. And now things are changing again. And we just need to best prepare them for that. So I'd love to have further conversation about that and what we can do to prepare the next generation of engineers and technicians and creative people and where those jobs may be. I don't have the answer, but I'll certainly love to have a conversation with you about that, Paul.
Well, Russ, I think you nailed a couple pieces. Is the cheese moving? Clearly, this is, if you look at the Netflix stock, if you look at this is the titanium age of TV. Media, never has so much content been consumed like this. It's changing how we're consuming. And look, AVOD, SVOD, the traditional VOD models, they're alive and well. When it comes to, what we've lived on, these, 1970s cable affiliate agreements, that may be changing. That landscape is very different these days. And, I'll probably get smacked for saying that from someone on this call. But I think as we look to the future of all the virtual MVPDs, as we look to the new consumer, and they're learning how to consume right now while we're on this call, it is just astronomical. So I would offer that while there may be less of the traditional jobs, Wimbledon did 16 courts with robotic cameras that were unmanned. That was before COVID. and they captured the majority of what they needed from those outlying courts, and they blended it into their shows. The automation is coming on so strong. So I think, as we're talking about what do we do to help people prepare for the future, it's a different type of training. Obviously, there's a huge IT background. I mean, everything we're talking about here is IP based. So, for kids growing up, and I have a 24-year-old gamer. At one point, he said he was thinking about TV. I said, great, get a finance degree or an IT degree to go with it. Because, the traditional TV models that we're growing up with are changing. Now, they're not dead, but I think, we're going to run the wheels off them in our lifetime. And, right now, somebody has something on their bench that could be that disruptive technology that just flips the paradigm. And with that, that's how we're looking at it. We're saying, okay, how do we stay relevant to our fans? What technological models will be their consumptive desire? I mean, is it that you want to watch a whole episode of whether it's a hunting thing, or do you just want to go to the recipe to make this awesome venison? Is it about the whole fishing story, or is it simply about some technical aspect? So we're slicing and dicing our content, 6 ways to Sunday, to try to give it more broader appeal. So it's really a heavy duty repurposing of almost every frame. How many places can we apply this so that we're getting multiple bangs out of the individual content? I think, everybody here is trying to solve the same problem, with such an ocean, and I don't mean to go off, but with such an ocean of availability, how do you find what you're after? I mean, you can get on YouTube and you can watch anything, right? And sometimes you do. And you're like, why am I watching this? I should go to bed. I think we've all found that. It's a black hole if you're not careful. So, a lot of it will be dictated by our viewers and by the consumer. I think right now we just have to, for us with stadiums, for anyone who's teaching, we have to have consumer confidence, or we're not going to have butts and seats. And that's a huge part of our business is butts and seats, eyes on the channels, eyes on our product. And, that confidence that we're doing everything we can to make a top quality product for them. It's not always easy to keep. In a stadium, it's air conditioning, it's wiping down handrails. With something like what Scott's doing, it's how fresh, how vibrant is the latest thing. These gaming, if anyone hasn't seen the eSports, these big championships, they're unbelievable. And the amount of video these guys take home in 4 and 8K now is just insanity. They're going to use up all the servers. So I don't know. There's just so much to it, and I don't want to keep going as the questions come in, but it looks like there's some stuff here about gaming for you, Scott.
I was just going to tee off what you said. I think you said that it's a golden age of TV because of Netflix. And I actually would say we've democratized making live content to the point where all you need is a decent computer and a webcam. And I know that's antithetical to how we've always built live productions and live networks. Is we've always said it's got to have a $250,000 switcher, and it's got to have $150,000 cameras. For when I joined eSports, that was the biggest shift that I found was they don't hold those same ideals true. They say why is this works? Why would I use Ikegami? And we know why, but the next generation doesn't. And so what I would recommend to the question of what to study and what to teach, you have every tool that used to take millions of dollars to build a control room and a machine room and a satellite uplink, and you can do that yourself and stream something to YouTube or Twitch tonight. And I think the production methodologies, the tools you're going to use, just that sense of creating content that's compelling, you can learn those things. Let the technologies come down so far that anyone can do that. So to what I would say is still make a great piece of content. How you do it, just be open to newer ways to try this. And yeah, there's arguments on the quality levels lower. Well, quality levels lower, but the price is essentially free. So at what point do we care so much that it's not, a 3CCD? I don't know if 3CCD isn't even the technology anymore. But back in the day when you needed a 3CCD camera sensor in order to call it a good show, we're past that time. And I think that's the thing that I've learned that's been a bit different. So use the resources you have in front of you today to learn the techniques that we all learned on very expensive gear. And then you can always pivot that into a big production like an ESPN or Riot or the Broncos. I mean, let me sum it up with one thing. We had 6,000 seats filled in the final stadium. That's the smallest we've ever done. Others would be happy. I know Pac-12, we'd be happy to have 6,000 people in an event, but we had 100 million people watching online. You can do that too. It doesn't matter the size and the number of seats. I know that there's a content that you have to do for in stadium, but don't limit yourself. You can then repurpose that content for a way larger audience that's sitting at home. And right now we're all sitting at home. So there's a lot of people hungry for content. Where it comes from, I don't think anyone really cares. Whether it was on a 360 Ikigami or a webcam, if it's compelling, people will watch it.
Well, you know, you said something. I know Jason probably wants to wrap us up here pretty quick. The 100 million people is a great problem to have, and the excitement about buying the game and moving that all forward. And Jack, your son, is going to be fine if he's getting into this gaming side. He'll always pay the rent. With that, I think, you know, our biggest challenge with some of the more traditional models is how to monetize this, because you nailed it, Scott. The free, you can get anything you want to see free, hundreds of channels of anything you want to see for free. So how do we stay relevant amongst all that? It's quality. It is some special tie to your some type of true connection to your audience, something that makes you the brand they prefer. You know, Nike's figured it out. There's a number of things that we have to really look at as we go forward. How do we monetize this? Because at any level, I mean, unless you're just a webcammer living in mom's basement, you still got bills to pay. You still have facilities to run. You still have, you know, real businesses to run. So I think that's, as we all march forward, I mean, you watch YouTube today and you're really getting pummeled with commercials, but you can buy up and get rid of the commercials. So, you know, all these sort of in-app purchasing is really going to, I think that's the next biggest thing we're going to see. And of course, in our industry, for Russ and myself, you know, gaming is going to be a big piece. We're going to see an awful lot, you know, whether
microtransactions. That's Riot Games, microtransactions.
Yep. Whether there's a sports book in all the stadiums, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that very soon. So thank you.
It's still about stories, though. Still got to tell good stories.